Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today I'm joined by Jen Vasin, Senior Vice President of HR at Insight. Welcome to the show, how are you?
Great, thanks Chris, thanks for having me.
One of the things I love about Zoom is I get to peer into people's lives, and I just love the pictures behind you. For people who can see it, tell them about that on your left.
Very good. Yeah, so that is, that's a little custom curtain there. Those are my four kids.
I love it.
So they're a little bit older than that now, and so they probably hate that I have that, but reminds me of such great memories of them as young kids.
Jen, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally. You've kind of mentioned a little bit personally already, and your journey to where we are now at Insight.
Yeah, sure. I started my career in the transportation industry and found my way into HR like many people do. Almost by mistake. I mean, it certainly wasn't a mistake. It was an area I wanted to get into, but you don't often start there. And I had wished that I had started there, but at the time the company wouldn't hire me into HR without some frontline experience. So I started as a flight attendant for an airline here in town. And I had chosen the transportation industry because I had family in California, and I wanted to be able to visit them on the low wages I was earning at the time. Couldn't afford to buy tickets, so I started there. Ended up with a job in HR at the airline, and shortly after that, 9/11 hit, and I really I found that I lost my passion for the industry after navigating through all of that, and decided that I'd really do some soul searching around industries, and decided that I would give technology a try, and I've been happily in the technology space ever since.
Amazing. What was it that attracted you to the space? Because you said you've always wanted to work in it. What was it that attracted you?
I think just the excitement and the ever-changing environment of technology. Working with a whole bunch of young professionals and really super smart people. And I find in the space, I mean, people are just so genuinely excited about what they do every day, and everyone is doing something different. And that's really energizing to be in that environment.
Even when times are hard.
Yeah, and especially when times are hard, actually, I see our technology leaders just light up. How can I help these various businesses out there succeed? And they know that the answer is through technology. So I watch them from a distance. No one would want me in there sort of designing networks or doing cybersecurity. But I watch them, and they're really excited about what they do. And from an HR perspective, I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Obviously, focus for our audience is employee engagement. How do you prioritize employee engagement in your leadership style?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we do at Insight that are best in class here. And, for us, it's about starting with our values. We rolled out updated values in 2015. And so for us, it all starts there. Everyone knows what the values are. They know what they mean. They know how to behave with those values. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about 11,000 people globally that if you called them today, they'd say, hey, here's our values, and let me give you an example of of how,
wow,
how these play out. And then, of course, we ask for feedback like every company does, but our action plans really are important, and making progress against those. We measure ourselves in a number of ways, and we take a look at NPS score for our employees. We call them teammates. Obviously, we look at attrition, and what we found during our journey to become an employer of choice is, as you've seen, satisfaction scores increase, which we have quite dramatically. Of course, you would expect to see attrition, going down at the same rate. And so it's really exciting to see all of those things come together. Of course, there's a lot behind the scenes in terms of engagement, recognition, leadership development and training, really having a personal touch to leadership.
Yeah.
Being very, very involved with teammates and helping them through crisis situations and things. It's meaningful work for sure.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to test you on your values now. What are your core values?
Yeah. So they're hunger, heart, and harmony. Fairly easy to remember. Prior to this exercise that we went through, which was a global teammate exercise, really, lots of interviews and discussions with them. We had 8 or 9 values. I couldn't remember them all, not even the HR leader. So these values were always part of our fabric at Insight, but during these teammate conversations and interviews, it really came out that these were the 3 that mattered most. And so that's what we, that's what we lead by. That's what we live by. And they really set us apart, I find, in the technology industry. Well, any company probably, really.
What I love about it is the simplicity as well, because with any successful brand, you have to create a brand around it because people won't remember it otherwise as well. And it's very easy to remember that. I'm sure even a few weeks from now, even I'll be like, oh, this is the values as well, that long ago. And then it creates that common language amongst people in your organization when everyone's talking about it. Because I was going to ask you, how did you embed that and make sure it's filtered down? But now already you've answered that by telling me how simple it was. So I suppose that's one step. Don't overcomplicate it and have a huge list that no one's going to remember. In terms of your core values, how have they shaped the work that you're doing around D&I and building those programs?
All of our values come into play there, but really when you talk about harmony, it is about diverse perspectives. How do we get all of those diverse perspectives, honor them, and, have conflict respectfully, obviously, trying to understand everyone's viewpoint. But our focus on D&I has been incredible. We have teammate resource groups like many companies do. But I'll tell you that these teammate resource groups are inspiring every single day. The leadership that has stepped up from the organization to run these, teammates who have day jobs, make a lot of time for their TRG work as well. A teammate resource group, that's what we call them.
No worries.
It's been fun to be part of. Of course, I'm a part of the groups, but our HR organization doesn't run them. They are run out in the business. We have seen incredible hiring from an inclusivity perspective. Of course, we look at those sort of stats, and our diverse teammates tell us in their surveys that they're more engaged than our non-diverse teammates. And so that makes us feel good about what we're doing and where our focus is.
How does it work? Because I know companies take different approaches. Can people just create their own group? Is there a process? I'm always interested in how companies approach this.
Yeah. There's a process, but it's driven by the employee. They'll meet with HR and go through the roadmap in terms of, here's what I like to do. Here's the goal of the group. Mm-hmm. Here are the metrics. Here's how I want to gain membership, and here's why we need it. And of course, we approve them all, but we provide some guidance in terms of really getting it off the ground.
Yeah, is one of those requirements to have like a key stakeholder involved in each of those groups? Because I know sometimes that's a requirement of certain companies.
We have an executive sponsor, and then the employee starting it has to have a pretty built out sort of leadership team, if you will.
Oh, okay.
So that if that person were to leave or maybe take on new role in the company, the group wouldn't just dissolve. There would be legs under it, and it would keep moving because, we found that in the past we'd have a really passionate teammate who would get one of these started. The minute they took on a new job or had new responsibilities, maybe a baby at home or something, the group would just dissolve. And so we really had to set up a sort of a governance structure that allowed the group to just continue on through all of those transitions. Yeah,
that's a really important point that you mentioned. I've seen companies miss that. It's a great piece of advice for everyone listening to make sure you do that, because it will just disappear, which is a real shame.
It will.
In many ways. What about the link to purpose and the link within innovation? That seems to be a strong correlation and focus for many leaders as well.
Yeah, our purpose at Insight is to make meaningful connections to help businesses run smarter. And if you think of the people who work for us and they're working for our clients, I mean, you can see it in any industry out there. Every industry has become technology enabled or technology focused. And so we get to sort of design these solutions that we can see in play out in the market. And then we can see those companies prosper as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking to technology people, I mean, there isn't any greater purpose to their work.
It's true.
And than that. And of course, people like me, we're in other back office roles, but we're supporting all these great, smart-minded technology teammates. So it's really fun.
Must be quite useful for you, especially in such a tough market in terms of attracting that talent, right? They're so in demand as well. Would you say that's one of your competitive advantages?
Yeah, I see our competitive advantage being our culture.
Yeah.
When we start with the values, I mean, there's a lot more to it, of course. We value and prioritize recognition around the company, which does a lot. Leadership development is really important to us, all the way from the top, and that's not only helping our individual teammates, but they respect and value what they get from their leaders even more. Mm-hmm. The other thing that sets us apart is that our focus and care for the teammate is second to none. I think we run an internal foundation that supports teammates in crisis. And that's really one thing that most of our teammates would cite in terms of what is our heart core value? What does that mean? And that's one big component of that, being alongside people when they're in a crisis. And of course, that happens to all of us over the course of our careers.
I love that, because some people may see the heart one as maybe fluffy, but it's anything but.
Some people do see it as fluffy. And I guess the question I pose is, how does it feel when you yourself are in the middle of a crisis? How would it be if your employer was alongside you on that journey? You've been around any length of time, you've been through your own crisis or two or three, and it's really meaningful, because if we can be alongside someone during that, they have a great deal of respect and admiration for the company, and as a result are unlikely to leave.
What's that saying? It's something along the lines of they'll forget what you say, but they won't forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, that's it. People may forget what you know or what you say, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
It's super, super important. For you personally, over the last sort of 18 months, where do you see, obviously there's been a lot of uncertainty, it's been challenging times, but where do you see the biggest area for opportunity coming out of this?
I think mental health is a huge area of opportunity for all employers. And so that's, you've probably heard that a million times now, but really just keeping engaged with our teammates and helping them through some of the isolation and the different way of working, the different future of work. What sort of programs and connections can we forge to ensure that everyone is feeling like they have a meaningful outlet for discussion and collaboration. Mm-hmm. That's top of mind for all of us.
Yeah. And I feel like we've made huge strides there. I think for the first, a number of reasons, some intentional, one of them is for the first time, we actually can see inside the lives of some of our leaders through Zoom. Mm-hmm. And go, oh, they're also got kids that are running around driving them crazy. Or they're all, we're like, it kind of humanized everyone. Yeah. It's like, wow, okay, I'm not the only one, that has a challenge, because we don't share those things. And we started having conversations about our kids and our families. And even though you've been working with these people for years, we were having conversations around things we never did before for the first time, which was really cool. I feel like I learned more about my team and even my friends during the last 18 months than previous years before that as well, which is great. And more leaders now are talking about their own challenges with mental health, normalizing the conversation, bringing it to the table as well. So I agree. I feel like that is one of the silver linings. if anything. It's interesting. What about from a cultural perspective? A big conversation in our community now is, can you build culture remotely? Can you extend those values and your why, in a digital environment? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly need to be very, very intentional about it. It doesn't just happen. But we've seen really good results. I mean, we have a lot of teammate engagement sort of touch points, and look, they're not mandatory. So join if they interest you, and skip this one if it doesn't interest you. But all kinds of things, and you've heard so many of these, but generally very unrelated to work. I don't know. On Friday, we talked to two of the stars from Wicked, the Broadway production, and a couple months before that, we talked to a couple of stars from Hamilton, and
that's so cool.
What it's like doing that for a career, and those are just a couple of examples. But what I find during those sessions is that we as teammates of Insight, we develop relationships with others in random cities and random positions around the globe, and you never forget that. People, you've just become acquainted with someone that has this interest in Hamilton the way you do, or whatever. You feel like you're this little, in this small little company, which of course we aren't. And so those things, those sorts of events, I believe, will always be part of the fabric of the culture, whether we're in some of the time or hybrid or whatever.
Yeah.
We also have, mental health first aid, which are people who are actually certified out in the business to be first responders to mental health issues. And of course, we're not trying to take over the profession, which is such an important profession, but rather, we're trying to be able to spot it remotely, which can be really hard. So important to be there. To be there for each other. So these are things. All of these sorts of things will continue into whatever the working environment is in the future.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to jump into our quick fire round. So I asked these questions to every guest. I didn't send you in advance because I never tell anyone. It's always a surprise. So all of the guests have answered these questions. So I'm not just picking on you. So you got 30 seconds for each question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You're like, I ain't got a choice. What are your hobbies and passions outside of the office?
My kids and their activities. We do a lot outdoors. Love to hike and bike and scuba dive, and then of course they have activities at school. So we find ourselves, my husband and I are sort of glorified teen Uber drivers right now. But it's really fun, and we enjoy every minute. So
there's nothing more fun though than doing activities like that with your kids, is it? Right? Like, I love it as well. So that's a great hobby. You get to spend time with the kids and do fun things. It's a tick on both of those. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR today, what would that be?
Oh, click my fingers. The one thing I think I would change is there's still this stigma around, if I pick up the phone and call someone today, most likely the way they're going to answer it is, oh, Jen, what did I do wrong? And it's
I get it.
It's sort of a joke, because that's not how we run, HR anymore, any HR professional.
No one really.
But I hope that changes someday, because it's just not at all in alignment with sort of our values or the way that the function should be seen.
I agree. No one said that before, but I completely get it. And I've heard that from many of your peers in conversations over the years as well. I love that. I love that one. How would your kids describe what you do for a living, do you think?
I actually have no idea. I do my best to sort of explain. I think in their mind, they're just like, how could you spend so much time on a computer and on phone calls? And, and none of it is gaming, Mom. None of it's gaming.
No worries.
I don't know.
No. Have you ever considered leaving the profession? If so, why?
No, I actually just love what I do. I mean, like you and I talked about with you, I wake up every day super energized. I feel like every day is something different. It's a whole bunch of functions under human resources,
That's
which
true.
makes it so fun for me. I mean, one day I could be, designing some, executive metric for a compensation plan, and the next moment I could be working on leadership development program or a benefits program, or um, I I'd be hard pressed to find a career that had that much variety.
100%.
And I love it. I mean, I just really thrive with that. With that variety and the intellectual stimulation that it provides.
Yeah, there's always something to learn. There's
always something to learn,
yeah.
And amazing people to support. I mean, the teammates that I get to work with every day is just, it's really fun.
Amazing. What would you say the biggest investment you've made in yourself in your career?
Oh, I guess there's been a few. I went and got my MBA. I mean, it was so many years ago that it wasn't an investment like it is today for people. But at the time, it certainly, felt like a lot of time and money. That was important to me because sometimes HR professionals are looked at like not business leaders, and that wasn't what I ever endeavored to be seen that way. Recently, our CEO asked me to go about getting on a board of directors, and that was hard, a lot of hard work. And so I invested a lot of time in that process and working towards that. So that was a way that I invested in myself.
Who would you say is the one person in your career that's had the biggest impact?
Oh, geez. I've had...
you can say more than one, because sometimes I know it's a hard one. You're like, well...
there have been a lot. I mean, no one gets to where they are without so much support. My family has been incredibly supportive. My husband, my current boss, CEO, the current CEO, has taught me so much about leadership and has really, really ensured that I look at leadership first. That's a big priority of mine as a result of that. I worked for a boss right out of college who was really impactful for my career, and I credit him with providing me confidence.
What's his name?
His name's Joel.
Give Joel a shout out.
Yeah, he might be listening in, but I remember, one day I was struggling with confidence, and he said, Jen, there'll come a day when I'll be calling you for a job. And, of course that's not true. I mean, he's done incredible things. It certainly doesn't need me, to help him with a job, but just the confidence that inspired in a young person, the message was delivered right at the time when I needed it most. Wow. And I've never forgotten that.
Amazing. All these years later, right? It's still stuck with
all
you.
These years later. Yeah.
Amazing. And then last question, what advice would you give to sort of the HR leaders of tomorrow?
I guess the advice I'd give is, when you're pressed on priorities and time and don't know which way to turn or what to do next, the people always come first. So I know we have a lot of other responsibilities, but anytime there's any question, and obviously it happens to me too. I've never been disappointed when I've headed towards the people first and helped resolve something or help navigate something with a teammate. And I think if we all work that way, the profession would be even better than it is today.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time to join. I feel like we spoke a lot about purpose during this call, and I can clearly feel, and I'm sure everyone agrees that's listening, that you are in the right place, living your purpose, in the right role as well. So it's amazing. So keep up the amazing work, and thanks for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, Chris, thanks for the time, and thanks for anyone out there listening. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.